This video is how to do some of the finishing techniques that I do on my glitzy shawls. It's done with a real large needle, a size 17, and a finer yarn or thread, as you can see here, and it makes this big open weave, so it gives the effect that you've done some kind of a fancy lace stitch, but you haven't. To start with, I will show you the two different bind-offs. Normally, people, when they bind off, they just do a standard bind-off, and as you see, for a shawl, you really would like the bind-off to be fairly loose. But in some cases, if you're not a real good bind-offer to make it loose, when you go to put it on, it's very tight, so you really don't get a full stretch on your shawl. Like here, this will stretch out to about 7 inches on this little small mock-up. I found a new way to bind off, and even if you're a tight binder offer, this still works, because this one you can stretch it out up to 11 inches. There's also another one you can do, which would probably stretch it out to about 8 or 9 inches. I will show you a list of how to do that. But to start with, let me show you the bind off, because that's the part I'm at. It's pretty straightforward. Oops. I'm doing this on short needles for the demonstration purposes, but you actually would be using the 14-inch long ones when you make this. The first stitch you would slip, the second stitch you knit, and then you knit these two together. So even if you knit tight, this is still going to come out very loose. The next stitch you knit, and you do a regular bind off. After that, you knit one, and knit these two together. Then you knit one and bind off. Now if you have trouble knitting two together, whoops, somewhere along the line this one fell off. Let me get this back on real quick. There we go. If you have trouble knitting the two together off the right hand needle, you can always slide the two back onto the left hand needle and then knit the two together. I just find this is a little extra work, and if I can avoid extra work, I do. Then you knit one, bind off. Knit one, knit two together. It always helps if you have as pointy of 17ths as you can get your hands on. The blunt point ones just don't give you the flexibility when you're doing the bind off as the ones with the narrower points do. That's knit one, knit two together, knit one, bind off, knit one, knit two together, knit one, bind off, knit one, knit two together, knit one. I'm just about done, but I just want to show enough of it so you get the motion and the feel for it. Knit one, knit two together, knit one, bind off. Now you usually end up with a bind off. Knit one, knit two together, then you knit one and bind off. And at this point, you trim a nice long piece. You want to have a nice long tail, and there's a reason for this. And you bind it off, or finish it off by running the yarn through. So now you have a very long tail here. Now each of the places where you had to join, you do the same thing. You leave a tail. Here on the side where I had to connect the two together, I left a tail, and I made a really strong knot there because you don't want this to come undone. And on the other side where the other piece joined together here, same thing, I left a nice long tail. You can't weave these in because it's such a loose weave. If you try to weave them in, they're going to come out. So this is a way you can hide it in your fringe and make it look like it's supposed to be. So here's the two different ways you can bind off. If you don't like the super stretchy bind off, but you definitely want it more than a standard bind off, which is knit one and you pass one over to bind off. You can do the one I did, which is slip one, knit the two together off the right needle, knit one, bind off, and then you just repeat what's between the parentheses. If you want one that's not quite as loose, you can do it a little different where you knit one, or slip one, knit the two together off the right needle, knit one, bind off, knit one, bind off, then repeat. So what you're doing is the knit one, bind off twice, which doesn't have as much stretch. Now once you've got your piece finished, the next thing you want to do is make your fringe. Now I found the quickest and easiest way to make fringe is grab yourself a VCR, a DVD case. You place your yarn around it and just go around it, I believe like 90 to 95 times, and that will give you enough fringe to go down both sides. So once you have all your fringe done, you cut it here, and now you have the fringe you need to make your piece, and use a crochet hook. So what I do is I start on the corner, grab one of each, fold it in half. I'm used to doing it on a different angle. Insert your hook in the corner, pick up your 2 yarns and pull it through. You could use your fingers too, but I found a crochet hook really helps. Then after you get your loop through, you want to bring the 4 tails through that loop and pull it tight. And your first fringe is made. I like to do my fringe between the little knobs. You see you got knobs here, 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 and here. I always put my fringe between each. That way I know I get the same amount of fringe on both sides. So I will go in here, pull it through, and then bring your loops through and pull it tight. And you take the next one, fold it in half, pull it through, and then pull your tails through. Now when you get to this one, since you've already have your arrows, you just want to grab your other yarn that goes with it, fold it in half, bring it through, and when you go to pull it through all 4 pieces, just like that. And then the only one you would tighten is the new piece you're adding. So when you look at the thing in the scheme of things, it looks like it belongs. And you don't have to worry about weaving your tail in. Same on your other corner. This one, you'd add your pieces and you cut this off to the same length. And then when you get to this one, which is, in this case, 24K, you would grab your arrows, fold it in half, go through, and pull all 4 pieces through just like you did before, but this time the one you're going to tighten is your arrows. Pull it tight. Now you've got your 24K or whatever yarn you're using as part of it. And the same with your corner, your little tail at the bottom, same thing. You left a long piece when you started your work, so that way you can work on either side, and then you trim off so they're all the same length. Now there's many different yarns out there you could use. This is the one I like the most. This is the Arrows, or another name for it is ladder yarn. It's a really neat yarn. And the one that I've always used in it is called 24K. Unfortunately, 24K has been discontinued by the manufacturer, but there are some stores out there that might still have some of this in their back stock room, so it never hurts to make a phone call. If for some reason you cannot get the 24K with the Arrows, a couple of substitutes could be this Lucy yarn, which is same metallic. It's a little bit wider, but it still will give you roughly the same type of a knit. Or you can get this Fezza yarn called Jewel. It has a sparkle, but not quite as much, but it would work very nicely with it. And if all else fails, if you can get a hold of some Beautiful by Dark Horse yarn, it's the same yarn, but it has a sparkle. So this will give you that same sparkly effect.